Paul agrees with James. We are righteous by works. So let's follow the story that Paul gives in Romans 4, where he makes this claim that we are righteous by works. Paul tracks and parallels the Genesis story of Abraham's life. First, in Romans 4:1, Paul states that Abraham was not righteous by works of the flesh. What are works of the flesh? Works of the flesh are works of law or human performance done in order to please God, but God is not a fan of works of the flesh. So Paul proclaims that Abraham was not made righteous by works of the flesh. Instead, Paul says Abraham was made righteous by faith. The actual event where Abraham was made righteous by faith occurred in Genesis 15 when Abraham was about 80 years old. Some years later, in Genesis 17, God gives Abraham the seal of his righteousness, the circumcision. Paul says that Abraham's circumcision was a symbol of the righteousness that God gave him. It reminded Abraham every day that he was righteous. Paul continues in the story in Romans 4. He describes how the birth of Isaac came about. Paul says in Romans 4:18 that even though Abraham knew it was impossible for him to father a son at age 100, he believed God's promise that he would bear a son. Abraham was strong in his faith. Paul says in Romans 4:21 that Abraham, the one who was fully persuaded, was also able to perform. He was able to father Isaac because God gave Abraham power through his faith and hope. He received God's power and was able to perform and father a child at age 100. This event occurred in Genesis 21. Notice how the timeline is moved. He was declared righteous by faith in Genesis 15. He received the sign and seal of righteousness in Genesis 17 at age 99. And in Genesis 21, God gave Abraham the power to father a child. And now Paul makes a killer statement. In Romans 4:22, Paul says, therefore, it was also credited to him for righteousness. What was also credited for righteousness? His work of fathering Isaac. Paul says righteousness was credited to Abraham by faith in Genesis 15, and righteousness was credited to him again 20 years later at the fathering of Isaac by works of faith. Righteous by faith, righteous by works of faith. So according to Paul and James, Abraham was made righteous by faith in Genesis 15. Abraham was credited with righteous again by works of faith when he fathered Isaac in Genesis 21. And according to James, Abraham had righteousness imputed again at the offering of Isaac in Genesis 22. We are righteous by faith and also by works of faith.